Good afternoon, and welcome to True Crime Mysteries. If you are new to the channel, hello and welcome, and if you are returning, welcome back. Today we are jumping right back into the final part of the Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos video. Let's get into it. On September 4th, 2018, Theranos sent an email to investors stating that the company would be shutting down. By that time, Elizabeth had been removed as CEO, and it was her replacement, David Taylor, who made the announcement. The company had never recovered from the scandal. Hundreds of millions of dollars had been sunk into an idea that had never come to fruition. It had all been smoke and mirrors in an effort to buy more time. By September, the company had already been fighting legal battle after legal battle with investors, scrambling to recoup any money they could before the inevitable foreclosure. The company had already been fighting bankruptcy for over a year prior. And in March, Elizabeth and Sonny had been charged with fraud by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Sonny had left the company when it was announced that the SEC was beginning its investigation into Theranos in 2016. Though a spokesperson for Theranos stated that Mr. Balwani isn't being blamed for the company's regulatory problems, Elizabeth's testimony to the SEC said otherwise. The transcript of her interview is nearly 1,000 pages long, and it is filled with statements such as,
I don't know specifically. I'm not sure. I don't know exactly. I just don't know.
Language that distanced herself from decisions made by the company and directing the investigators to look elsewhere for answers, which much of the time was towards Sonny. The investigation with the SEC concluded with a settlement. As part of that settlement, Holmes was to return millions of dollars in investments, pay a $500,000 fine, and Holmes would not be able to serve as an officer or director of a public company for 10 years. Sonny was also charged on his own with making numerous false and misleading statements in investor presentations, product demonstrations, and media articles, and he has decided to fight those charges in court. Stephen Paikin, the SEC's co-director of enforcement, said in a statement to the press, "Really, this company was a company that was a two-person operation, where Holmes and Balwani exclusively controlled Theranos. They were responsible for all of the misconduct alleged in this complaint." On June 15, 2018, Holmes and Balwani were both indicted on charges of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. They both pleaded not guilty, and a trial would go forward. Despite the charges, Holmes remained on the board of directors until Theranos closed its doors forever. Elizabeth knew she had an upcoming trial, but she seemed to have moved on with her life. Her social media was all turned private, but images began leaking out from those who remained in her social circle. People had assumed the disgraced CEO would lie low, stay out of the public eye while she awaited trial. As the company she had founded was locking its doors forever, it was revealed that Elizabeth was doing something completely unexpected. She was partying at Burning Man with a new boyfriend. People who saw her after the fall of the company described having bizarre interactions. She bumped into ex-Theranos employees and acted like they had been old friends, and didn't acknowledge the huge elephant in the room. What happened with Theranos? Where did all of the money go? What about the trial? Was everything a lie? A million questions needed answers, but Elizabeth just brushed it off and went on to introduce her new partner. In 2019, Holmes became engaged to 27-year-old Billy Evans, an heir to Evans Hotels. The couple posted cute selfies while living in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in Silicon Valley, a 9-bedroom mansion worth $135 million. The couple even went to Burning Man, a week-long festival held in Nevada that attracts tens of thousands of people to participate in an anti-consumerism experiment with a community of artists. The couple married shortly after, and fortunately for their honeymoon, it was announced that her and Sonny Balwani's trials were to be delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In March 2021, Holmes' legal team informed the courts that Elizabeth was pregnant and requested another delay to give birth, which was granted. She gave birth to her son later that summer, and on August 31st, 2021, we finally saw the first step in her trial, jury selection. When Elizabeth Holmes founded Theranos, she was 19 years old. She was at the company's helm as CEO for 15 years. Often, much attention is focused on how young and naive she was, but she was in her mid-30s when the company dissolved. Additionally, she had every opportunity to bring in experts to help with the company, but failed to do so. She also didn't listen to those who tried to help her. She got rid of anyone who didn't agree with her. Allegedly. It isn't illegal to have a dream, but it is illegal to lie to investors, forge government documents, and mislead government agencies. Let's get into the trial of Elizabeth Holmes. Her trial began on September 7, 2021. Opening statements from the prosecutor, Robert Leach, started things off with this statement. Out of time and out of money, Elizabeth Holmes decided to lie. It would be their job to convince the 12 jurors without a shadow of a doubt that Holmes knew the technology didn't work and deliberately misled investors and patients. Elizabeth's defense had fought hard to grant her an exception to the face covering requirement in the courtroom. She showed up to court looking very different than she had while at Theranos. Her new look was softer, lighter, more muted, and was a direct contrast to the sharp, dark, and slick uniform she sported as CEO. She almost didn't look like the same person. During the trial, thousands of text messages between Elizabeth and Sonny were brought in as evidence. Many are personal messages, what one might expect between a couple that works together. Some are strictly business, and some are a mix of the two. Especially in 2015, there are several messages where Sonny is directing Elizabeth, telling her she is acting too giddy, or overusing words and sounding immature. They were together for 12 years, and their relationship had started when Theranos was founded. At trial, Elizabeth detailed that she was emotionally and physically abused by Sonny, who controlled her. The text messages do reflect that the couple appeared to fight often, but there are no clear details about those fights. The vast age gap does stand out as odd, keeping in mind that they met while Elizabeth was in high school. Sonny had also invested millions of dollars of his own money into Theranos when the company was founded. Age, power, and money seem to have played a key role in his influence over Elizabeth. On the flip side, the prosecution countered Elizabeth's defense that she had been controlled and manipulated by bringing forward evidence that Elizabeth was having another relationship. From 2010 to 2015, it was revealed that Elizabeth had what she described as a fleeting romance. It wasn't covered extensively in the trial, as it seemed that prosecutors didn't want to outright challenge that Holmes had been a victim of domestic abuse, but was more a way of adding doubt that she may not have been controlled in every aspect of her life, which is what she had stated. On the less personal side, other evidence that came forward were several investor calls that Elizabeth herself had made. Several calls made multiple false and inaccurate statements pertaining to Theranos' partnership with the military. These investor calls and presentations are actually where the bulk of the damning evidence came from. The presentation documents showed revenue projections that were determined to be false. There were also forged documents from government agencies. It was revealed that Holmes had copy and pasted the Pfizer logo onto documents in order to show investors that they had the appropriate approvals. Former employees also came forward, giving statements about the work culture at Theranos and who they reported to, which was often either Sonny or Elizabeth. Many also stated that it was Elizabeth who had the final say in decision-making. Jurors also heard several patients' statements about the experiences they had when they received lab work done by Theranos. Though it highlighted that there were clear problems with results from Theranos, it wasn't impactful to directly connect Holmes to those particular instances of fraud, though it did connect Holmes to several deceptions Theranos made to Walgreens, as Walgreens had not been made aware of how often Theranos was delivering incorrect lab results to patients. We will never know exactly how often Theranos test results failed, because the databases that contained that information disappeared mysteriously. The trial also covered testimony from a former lab director, Adam Rosendorf. He testified for 4 days during the trial. He said that he directly communicated with Elizabeth, almost exclusively during his time at Theranos. He served as the lab director from April 2013 to November 2014. He testified that he personally witnessed the failures of Theranos technology and that Elizabeth knew that the devices didn't work. In an email he wrote to Elizabeth in 2014, he asked to have his name removed from the Theranos lab license to relieve him of legal liability. He also said, "I feel really uncomfortable with what is happening right now in this company. I'm feeling pressured to vouch for results that I cannot be confident in." Elizabeth responded, "How sad and disappointing to see this from you." Rosendorf left the company shortly after this exchange. After Rosendorf left, the lab still needed a director to sign off on lab work and also be on the lab license. His successor was Sunny Balwani's dermatologist, Sunil Dhawan. Dhawan had told jurors his role at Theranos was to sign paperwork, and had only gone to the labs once or twice during his time at the company. He had been approached by Sunny, who said the position would be temporary while they found another lab director. He worked for Theranos for about 8 months, until there was an external audit of the labs, and he was replaced. He had no experience in pathology or laboratory sciences, but met federal and state requirements for the position. He testified he never saw the Theranos technology and did not know how it worked, but signed off on hundreds of documents. Another key testimony was that of Daniel Edlin. He worked at the company as a product manager from 2011 to 2016 and had been recruited by Christian Holmes, Elizabeth's brother, who had joined the company as a senior manager and had hired several of his classmates and friends from Duke University. Edlin said that it had been his job to give tours at the company headquarters to important visitors and potential investors. He detailed that the tours were carefully scripted, and it was his job to sell that narrative. He testified that the devices used by guests were set up with a demo application that prevented the devices from showing any sort of errors if the sample malfunctioned. Emails also revealed that Edlin had been directed to alter lab results to make them appear normal. He testified that he communicated directly with Elizabeth daily and was one of the few former employees that testified that he never had any concerns about the company until the Wall Street Journal article came out and he left the company. Proving that Elizabeth Holmes was culpable of fraud would prove to be a challenge for the prosecutors, but during the 10 weeks of trial, they seemed to be doing a good job of showing that Holmes was aware of Theranos' shortcomings, had herself altered documents, and projections for investors. According to trial experts, it was looking to be a slam dunk for prosecutors. Experts never expected Holmes to take the stand and open herself up to cross-examination, but in what seemed like a final effort to humanize Elizabeth to the jurors, the defense made an announcement. Elizabeth Holmes would be taking the stand.
The moment everyone was waiting for at the Theranos trial, Elizabeth Holmes taking the witness stand at her fraud trial. Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Cook.
And I'm Alan Martin. It was a dramatic moment in the months-long trial. Elizabeth Holmes becoming the lead witness for the defense.
KPIX5's Lynn Ramirez was in the courtroom for us.
Well, the question of whether or not Elizabeth Holmes would take the witness stand in her own defense has been one of the biggest questions hanging over this trial since the very beginning. And the answer came this afternoon on the very day the defense took over the case.
For 11 weeks, Elizabeth Holmes sat in silence, listening to the government's case that she conspired with her Theranos business partner to defraud investors. Today, she took the witness stand in her own defense to tell her side of the story.
It's a tactical decision to put your client on the stand, but this kind of a defendant, you can put on the stand because she's persuasive.
Holmes testified how she pursued her dreams of creating devices to improve health, how she dropped out of Stanford as a sophomore to start a company. She said she worked all the time, first exploring a pill that would transmit health data and administer doses of medicine, and later how that morphed into Theranos. While explaining the first Theranos device, she looked straight at the jury to explain the technology.
She's giving a pitch to the jury. She's explaining, she's teaching them what her device can do. And she's also giving them time to get to know her.
By testifying in her own defense, Holmes will also give herself up to cross-examination, which will set the stage for a showdown with government lawyers later.
This is who Elizabeth Holmes is. She's a skilled salesperson, and she's gotten so many people to believe in her, from investors to pharmaceutical companies. Why would a jury be any different?
Holmes took the stand looking composed and polished, and she was allowed to be maskless for her testimony, granting the jurors an opportunity to really analyze her expressions fully. She started at the beginning of Theranos' founding. She smiled and went over the story of how the company came to be. She appeared confident and poised while remaining focused on her lawyer. Occasionally, she broke her focus to direct her attention to the jurors to explain corporate or medical jargon. Her lawyers walked her through many of the incidents that had already been covered by the prosecutors, allowing for Elizabeth to tell her side of the story. In total, she was on the stand for 6 days. During that time, she admitted to altering the forged documents from Pfizer, but claimed she hadn't done it maliciously. She simply was excited about the data and wanted to share it. She said, "I wish I had done it differently," which had become a mantra of hers while on the stand. She expressed remorse for how things were handled at the company. She admitted to making several attempts at getting rid of the now infamous Wall Street Journal article. She said of the situation, "The way we handled the Wall Street Journal process was a disaster." It was also revealed that Holmes had hired a private investigator company, Interfer, to discover who was leaking to the WSJ. A total of $150,000 had been spent to harass and intimidate whistleblowers. In the things she did not admit to, Elizabeth passed the blame to Sonny, lab directors, employees, board members, and even her marketing agency. But in another statement, she testified that she was the only one in control over what was said to investors, business partners, board members, and journalists, which countered her entire defense argument that she had been controlled by Sunny Balwani. On the final day of her testimony, her legal team made an argument that differentiated from other fraud cases. Elizabeth had never cashed out her stock shares. She went down with the ship and didn't personally profit when the company collapsed. When asked directly if she had tried to mislead investors, she said, "Never." In total, the company had raised over $1 billion, funded by 275 different investors. 29 witnesses had been called. It was a 4-month-long trial, with jurors finally beginning their deliberation on December 17th. Judge Davila instructed them to take as much time as you need to discuss things. There is no hurry. On January 3rd, 2022, the jury came back after 3 days of deliberation. On 3 counts, they were hung, meaning they couldn't come to an agreement of guilty or not guilty. The jury acquitted 4 of the fraud counts and 1 of the conspiracy counts. A jury determined that Elizabeth Holmes was guilty on 4 of the 11 charges. Since the jurors could not come to a verdict on 3 counts of federal wire fraud, the prosecution can retry Holmes on those charges, though it seems more likely that they will drop them. They may wait to see how the trial of Sunny Balwani goes to make that decision. Holmes faces 20 years in prison for each count she was found guilty for. It is up to the judge to determine what is a fair and just sentence for this type of crime. Legal experts have weighed in, and it is assumed that Elizabeth Holmes will face a much shorter prison sentence than 20 years, possibly less than 10 based on a lack of criminal history. Holmes also has the opportunity to appeal the verdict. This could further delay any sentencing court dates. She will remain out of prison on a $500,000 bond until she is sentenced. Her legal team has proposed mid-September as a sentencing date, which would be after Balwani's trial. Sunny Balwani's trial has started as of this month, and I will let you know of any revelations that may come out of that trial. Well, that is it for this video. Please let me know if you want to see more corporate fraud, scandal-type videos. I always find these cases super interesting. As always, please give this video a thumbs up if you like the content, and subscribe for more if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to turn on that notification bell so you get notified when I post. If you've done all that and want to support me and the channel, we have channel membership and Patreon to get early access, members-only content, live streams, and more. We also have merch and other goodies in the description box and links to all my socials. But until then, I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.